All right, baseball is over. No more excuses. Welcome in to Fantasy Football Today. DFS, Frank Stanfield joined as always by Mike McClure and Sia Najad here to recap our Week 4 cash and GPP lineup construction. We'll take a closer look at our FFT DFS contest winner, Kush 6, and what he or she did in their lineup. And then we'll take an early look at Week 5 pricing. But as you likely know by now, I'm also the host of Fantasy Baseball Today here at CBS Sports. And admittedly, it is pretty damn tough to cover two sports at once, host two podcasts at once. I know Mike's probably there like, dude, I bet on like 8 different sports at once, and he's got it down. But it's been a bad DFS season for me to this point. So I am marking today, Tuesday, October 5th, as the day that I turn things around. And to help me do that, we have the Crystal Ball tag team here. Sia and Mike both called the Donald Parham first touchdown in Monday Night Football on the Early Edge podcast. Congrats to both of you. How's it going, Sia? It seems like you had a pretty good Week 4.
It was a pretty good Week 4. It could have been better. We're going to look at a couple of my good lineups from a DFS standpoint. And yeah, I had some really good picks. Unfortunately, with my, everybody does this with the tinkering on, Sunday morning. I pulled a couple shares of some really, popular, great guys, Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore. I pulled them out of some lineups. Granted, I left them in some lineups too, but it's just one of those things. You always, if you have a good feeling early in the week, don't be dissuaded off that good feeling as the week goes by. And that's a problem I think we all have when we're betting or doing DFS. But yeah, it was a good week. But I'll tell you what, man, the Donald Parham first touchdown thing that Mike and I hit was really pretty exciting. To call that touchdown, just 20 minutes earlier on the Early Edge, and to not only to win and have money on it, but to see all of the people tweet out their tickets was super, super exciting. And I'm hoping from a DFS standpoint, we can get some people to, in the very near future, tweet some big time GPP or cash takedowns, tweet at us there too.
What did you get Donald Parham at? 35 to
so
1?
On the show, I said 35 to 1, which is what it was at a lot of outlets. On my book, it was actually 40 to 1. So I got even a little in, but I wanted to use, my book's a little bit more obscure. I wanted to use a more commonly used outlet. So I referenced the 35 to 1, but yeah, I got it. A lot of people got it at 40 to 1, actually.
Very nice. Congrats to both of you. Mike, what's going on, man? How was Week 4 for you?
Week 4 was, it was an interesting one. I had a couple really good plays, as you'll see here in a few minutes. And the chalk that I was on was just awful. Just did not go my way at all there. Scraped out a win in cash, but really I didn't cash a single tournament lineup out of the 5 that I played. Really good on the prop side. It was undefeated throughout that and then hit there. So it was another week where I've kind of did the little seesaw. DFS was great Week 1, not good Week 2, great Week 3, kind of ho-hum here in Week 4. And it's just like every time I'm not so sharp in the DFS side, the props seem to carry me. And then the week when I was super great in DFS, I think I won 1 out of 4 bets on the betting side. So it's been a year to start. That's for sure.
Hey man, look, if we're breaking even, I think we're doing pretty good. But when you're hitting those first touchdown props, I think overall you're going to be doing pretty well this season. Usually, most people like to save the best for last. Let's start with the best from Week 4, and that was our guy, Sia Najad. In cash this week, put up a massive 170.88. Lots of fire emojis that you can see here in this lineup. Sia, why don't you break it down for us?
Yeah, so, Jalen Hurts, now listen, just because it's cash, it doesn't mean you don't correlate. But here with Jalen Hurts, I really didn't know who to correlate it with because you have, of course, Dallas Goedert and Zach Ertz, which you could have done, or you could have done any of the many receivers from, let's see, Devontae Smith to Jalen Reagor to Quez Watkins. I mean, even Kenny Gainwell is getting in there with some catches. So I just left him standalone. Kamar didn't really do me any favors. I probably should have paid up for Derrick Henry, which I did in a lot of other lineups. Montgomery was great. It looks like he's going to be out 4 to 5 weeks, but prior to getting injured, I mean, obviously he was the guy. And that was a guy we talked about, particularly on the Thursday show, along with DJ Moore. Listen, this guy is just a monster. I mean, whether Diggs was guarding him or not, and especially in garbage time, he was just lock button guy for Sam Darnold. So Corey Davis, we talked about revenge narrative, whatever you want to say about it. He's the #1 receiver on against a team that really can't defend receivers. And we're that's going to be a narrative we're going to talk about as the next few weeks go by, because Tennessee can't cover anybody. And Corey Davis did a really good job of proving that. we jumped on Westbrook Akinney for both GPP and cash. It didn't work out, but it at least gave us an opportunity to pay up for other guys. Now, 5.9 points for a guy that was, I believe, 3,200. It's not a disaster by any means, but again, I'm not looking at that number as much as I'm looking at the other numbers and what it allowed me to do. So again, I probably should have paid up for Derrick Henry instead of Kamara while getting that relief from Westbrook and Disley. But I have Derrick Henry here. Excuse me. So
I was about to say, see, what are you talking about, man? You
yeah.
crushed it.
So I'm just not used to seeing Henry in the flex. So my bad on that. But yeah, I guess the point here is, you can have a few duds in here, but if those duds are low salary duds that allow you to pay up for some monster, chalk or what have you, you're going to be just fine. So don't think in cash, even in GPP, but don't think in cash you have to hit home runs with all these guys. It's really hitting home runs with like 3 or 4 guys and having the other guys just be steady.
I think it's a great point that you bring up too, because again, you punt two positions here, your wide receiver 3, your tight end, and they combine for less than 10 DraftKings points, but you hit on the big chalk. And as you will see when we compare Mike and my lineup to Sia's this week, that was the biggest difference, was that you hit on the big chalk, and we did not have that chalk in our lineup. So Jalen Hurts, he's 24% owned in cash this week, puts up 31. David Montgomery, massive game. DJ Moore, massive game. Derrick Henry, 63% owned, but he puts up 28.7 in this spot. So, Mike, what do you think about this cash build here from Cia in week 4?
I like it. Obviously, he went heavy on the running backs. Makes a lot of sense. He elected to fade the Chiefs, which I thought was a little interesting. I thought that he might have a Kansas City player, whether it be Travis Kelce or Tyreek Hill, on that other side of Jalen Hurts, just because I think that they're mostly correlated to each other's success. But other than that, it's also amazing that Will Disley got up to 30% ownership, only 2.5 points, and still was able to walk away with a really nice score out of this. It's a great lineup.
Yeah, thank you. And honestly, the only reason I didn't, and I had Tyreek in it, this isn't my only, full disclosure, this is not my only cash lineup that I played, but I just, because of how I wanted to build with the running backs, it didn't allow me to get Tyreek or Travis Kelce, but agree with you there. And I did play a good amount of both of those for better or for worse throughout a lot of other lineups.
And I think, for me, Alvin Kamara is such an interesting player at this point, because Jameis Winston is just not throwing the ball to him very much. I mean, he had 0 targets this past week, and that's the first time that has happened in his NFL career. However, he has 50 carries over the last 2 games. So he's still a workhorse. He's probably more of a workhorse running back than ever before, but he's just doing it in a way that we've never seen Alvin Kamara do it before. So ultimately, he was the running back that I paid up for, and you'll see that in just a little bit. And that was part of the reason why I did not have a very good week 4. Let's move on to Mike's cash lineup here, and we will see 144.12 is the score, with quite a different build. He's a man of his word. He goes with the full-on KC stack. Patrick Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce up top. How did the rest of the list lineup do, Mike?
Well, it was very interesting. I was absolutely stunned that I was able to end up cashing still. Devontae Adams, Travis Kelce, obviously 2 huge core pieces for me this week, and those guys combined for less than one of them's median projection. So clearly did not get what I was expecting there. I did roll with the double tight end. I went with Disley as well. Could not believe that he got to be that ownership. I would not have played him if I thought he was going to be that highly owned. Just full disclosure on that. Really shocked that he didn't have a better game than that. As far as other pieces in the lineup, Kelce just wasn't there, and all that production went to Tyreek Hill. So the thing that's interesting about that is the reason why I was able to cash is because I was basically the only one that wanted to play Tyreek Hill in cash games at 2% owned. That is the only reason. And Patrick Mahomes, obviously 5%. I tell you, he's double digits every week. If you can find the value and you're confident in it, he's an absolutely fantastic cash game play every single week. So what's a little deceiving is, you could say Travis Kelce hurt me, and he did hurt me, but it didn't hurt me that much, because if you look at a median projection standpoint, right? Before the game started, if you look at the projections for what we would have projected for Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, we weren't going to be projecting 56 combined points between the two of them. All of those points were funneled over to Tyreek Hill when Kelce was non-existent, but having Tyreek in the lineup still is the reason why that Travis Kelce score didn't hurt me quite as much. And then the rest of it, I had David Montgomery as well. Makes a lot of sense there. And once again, Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes gets it done in cash games.
Yep, saved by Tyreek Hill. I mean, that's the main point that I have here as well. You get over 50 points on DraftKings at 2% ownership. That is going to help for sure. And you had Kyle Juszczyk as one of your running backs here at 0.2% rostered, but he was min price at the running back position, and that's what allowed you to ultimately get up to those Kansas City Chiefs. Yeah,
I think we texted about it before the week, or right before lock. I'd have to go back and scroll, but basically someone asked me in the chat what I thought the usage looked like. Didn't get all the carries or the looks necessarily I thought he was going to. Still was involved in the passing game, obviously, but he was out there for 82% of snaps. That is a lot for a minimum price running back that catches passes very well out of the backfield. They do not trust Sermon. They don't trust him enough. So because I was playing Disley and Disley was popping up in there, that's the direction that I ended up going because those plays were somewhat correlated. And once again, it was all about the priority of getting Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, and Patrick Mahomes all in there together.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that overall your cash lineups continue to look more like GPP lineups, but you've talked about how the industry is very sharp right now. And someone who I've bet on chalk week in and week out. And last week it worked because the chalk that I used hit. And this week it didn't work because the chalk that I had in my lineup just didn't hit. And again, I just didn't have the names that were all the way up there, the DJ Moores and the Derrick Henrys. And that brings you to my lineup. Our loser of the week goes to me.
Le who? The her.
All right, so let's pull up the lineup and see what happened here. I made poor decisions. I am not going to make excuses. Again, big week for chalk, and somehow I did not wind up with Derrick Henry, DJ Moore, or David Montgomery in this cash lineup. And it's going to look weird here because I have Aaron Jones and DK Metcalf in there. Originally, they were not. I had to late swap here because I missed out on all of that early chalk. So I tried to get off Najee Harris and Devontae Adams. That's why I wind up with Aaron Jones and DK Metcalf in the lineup here. And ultimately, I didn't get that those chalk plays because I went with Alvin Kamara. I went with Amari Cooper, who miraculously left the game on like the first drive, came back in and scored a touchdown. Like a hamstring injury, has his helmet off. Normally that's just like, all right, well, take your 0 in your lineup and that's about it. But somehow gets back in there and scores a touchdown. Odell Beckham, I'll talk about in just a little bit because Baker Mayfield, man, I can barely even say his name without like just the anger just building within. But do you guys have any words of wisdom here, advice? Because I can definitely use it. What do you think, Sia?
Well, for one, if you had Aaron Jones and Devontae Adams in there, I don't think that was an appropriate play. I think we talked about.
I didn't originally. I had Devontae Adams in the flex. I had Najee Harris at running back.
Oh, that's right.
So I late swapped to Aaron Jones to give me some direct leverage off of Devontae because I needed something crazy to happen in order to cash, and I knew it.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious what Mike's thoughts are here because given that, and I'm sorry I looked at it wrong initially, but I don't hate it. We both played Westbrook Akini. We both played Disley, and we see that Westbrook, even in Mike's contest, he was like 44.9%. Here is 34%. So that type of chalk isn't really hurting you, even if they don't come to fruition for a variety of reasons, including the ones I said, because it allows you to kind of pay up at other positions. I thought Kamara was going to have a better game. I think in this case, paying up the extra 400 to Henry, I probably would have found that and maybe played Kamara in GPPs as opposed to Derrick Henry. So I think in cash, you might have wanted to get that really solid chalk. Kelce didn't end up panning out. I can't criticize it too much. We were pretty big on Cooper. Beckham, we'll talk about, but listen, he got plenty of targets and he probably should have scored 1 or 2 touchdowns. Baker just completely missed him on a few balls there. So honestly, I don't hate it. I don't have a lot of criticism here, but maybe Mike does.
Baker Mayfield stinks. This guy stinks, man. I'm telling you, there's just something about, I don't know if it's like a mental block when Odell Beckham is on the field with him, like he's too nervous to play with him, whatever it might be. There's more pressure to make the throws.
Well, that's what it is. Frank, that's what it is. He wants to please Odell Beckham so badly. And this goes back to the Freddie Kitchens era. They would just scheme like the first play of the game would be some crazy, reverse to Odell Beckham. That they're so eager to make Odell happy that they just sort of, I think he just kind of freezes, and it's just one of those things. because some of these balls, I mean, high school quarterbacks can throw. I mean, the one at the end of the game, which would have been a 60 or 70-yard touchdown, I mean, you don't even have to hit him in stride. There was nobody near him. You could have literally just thrown it up there, had him stop in the middle of his route, and he would have caught it and run for 6. It's just weird, man. It's a mental block for him.
Beckham legitimately should have had 3 touchdowns in this game. Like, he was open down near the red zone on like a goal line fade where he just completely overthrew him. There was 2 long plays where they could have been touchdowns. And look, again, I'm not going to make excuses, but like, if Beckham puts up like a 30 spot here and I leave Najee Harris in my lineup, then I probably come close to cashing here. So shoulda, woulda, coulda. It is what it is. But yeah, I mean, Baker Mayfield, I don't know. It doesn't work with Odell Beckham. Mike, what do you think here?
I don't see any issues really at all. For me, Jalen is someone you can play without anyone in the game just because of the rushing upside that he possesses and that price point still. So I don't have any issues there. Your original build with Najee and Davante Adams, obviously like that. Those 2 plays were very highly correlated. I really, really liked both of those players. It's just an unfortunate product of it not working out, right? Disley didn't work out. Westbrook-Ikhine did not work out. By all accounts, Amari kind of worked out and salvaged it, but certainly still wasn't even exactly what we were expecting, when we're actually playing him in that lineup. So, it's just a product of things not working out. And that's going to happen a majority of the time, almost like you're playing, it's going to happen around 50% of the time like that. And you're going to be on the right side of it, even when it doesn't work out. You just like, for instance, my lineup, you looked at it there. I ended up on the right side of it because of one play. I played 4 players in my lineup that were over 35% owned, and they didn't all crush. In fact, several of them did not crush at all. I think 3 of the 4 did not have good games at all, right? Just an unfortunate product of the variance there. I ended up on the right side of it because of Tyreek Hill, and you're on the wrong side of it because your version of Tyreek Hill, Odell Beckham, didn't land in the end zone 3 times like he could have, like Tyreek Hill did.
Yeah. All right. Well, you made me feel a little bit better, Mike. I guess I'll play again in week 5, and hopefully we can turn things around. Let's take a look at our GPP lineup construction here. And again, we go to the man. Start with Seal's lineup here. He puts up 179.32 in this GPP lineup. Mahomes to Tyreek Hill, no bring back. That's 83 points right there in the lineup. Najee Harris pays off big, 6 receptions and a touchdown, though he was highly owned at 15%. Not crazy, but I guess for GBP, it's a little bit high. Zach Moss to score as well. Not really much correlation here in this lineup. Sia, was that by design, or was it just a play the best plays kind of lineup?
Well, so I wanted to play Mahomes and Tyreek Hill a lot this last week, and I played them a lot. So there were a couple lineups that had bringbacks, but again, with the Eagles, when you don't have a concentration of targets like you might with, like, let's say Minnesota or some of these teams that really just kind of throw to 1 or 2 receivers or have like 1 back, the bring back can kind of hurt you. So, I mean, it's one of those things. This was a single entry. I think I probably would have brought it back if it was a bigger GPP and just tried to get lucky with, Quez Watkins or Jalen Reagor or Devontae Smith or even Kenny Gainwell, who I did mention last week. But I didn't really feel the need to correlate with the Kansas City Chiefs with this lineup. I loved Zach Moss. I actually expected him to have a slightly better game than he did. Najee is just one of those guys. It was a volume thing. DJ Moore, we've already talked about him. Obviously, I swung and missed on Westbrook-Ikhine. As the week went, I got a little nervous about it because Josh Reynolds was getting healthy, but I just kind of stuck with Westbrook-Ikhine because I felt like he'd get enough volume, which I was wrong about. And then DK Metcalf, I actually expected him to do better too. But I guess the moral of the story is, you don't have in these GPPs where only the top 20-ish% get paid out. Man, if you hit on your stack, and when I say stack, I say it loosely, Mahomes to Tyreek Hill. If you hit on the stack or just 2 or 3 players outside of the quarterback receiver combo, you're good. Obviously Tyreek's not going to score 50 per game, but it just kind of gives you evidence that you don't have to hit home runs everywhere to cash in a GPP. You just have to hit a few home runs. That's it.
Yeah, and if you told me beforehand, I mean, look, we all kind of expected Buffalo to win that game big. I mean, they were 17-point favorites, but if I told you they were going to win 40 zip, you probably think Zach Moss has a little bit better game than just 12 DK points there. So, I think that you were probably a little bit on the bad side of that as well. And you still managed to put up a pretty massive score thanks to Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill. Let's take a look at one of Mike's GPP lineups here. And he goes with the 3x1 Packers stack with Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and Allen Lazard. You have Najee Harris here on the bring back. You do have 2 Chiefs in your lineup with Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Travis Kelce. By the way, Kelce, of course, has that dud, but that's going to happen when Tyreek Hill goes for 50 DK points and scores 3 touchdowns. But Mike, what were you thinking here with this GPP construction?
Yeah, quickly comment on Sia's last lineup too. I just wanted to point out that Patrick Mahomes and his pass catchers continue to be single-digit owned in tournaments. He got Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill both under 10% owned, which is just fantastic. So keep playing them because the field does not play them enough.
And if I could just, Mike,
ahead,
I got to interrupt you real quick because we got a criticism when we put out our the little cheat sheet that we put out on Thursday to kind of help people with their builds and our favorite stacks and things of that nature, chalk plays, what have you. And the criticism for me specifically was, oh, well, how long did it take you to think up, Mahomes to Kelce, which I had on my sheet as opposed to Mahomes and Hill. But the point that you made to follow up, Mike, is, well, first of all, I like the stack, but second of all, people aren't playing these guys. So what you think is like super intuitive or super obvious, it may be, but that doesn't mean everybody's playing them. And so there's like tremendous value in the best quarterback and best tight end combo, or best quarterback, best receiver combo, especially when it's like 10% or lower. So don't assume that the obvious plays are the super common plays, because oftentimes they're not.
And you know what's crazy about that, Sia, is this is always the case. This is always the case with the Chiefs. And I understand because their costs are prohibitive. So again, if you want to play Kelce and Hill and Mahomes in the same lineup, you wind up with someone like Kyle Juszczyk as your RB2. But we are getting those players at single-digit ownership, especially in GPP. So I think it's a good point there, and a nice reminder for everyone. Mike, going back to this GPP lineup here, what happened?
Yeah, Aaron Rodgers and company, did not end up throwing the ball to the receivers we thought they would throw the ball to. That's pretty much as simple as that. If you look at this and listen to basically what I say throughout the week, you will see that I do exactly what I tell you I'm going to do. I find the quarterback stack that I like, and then I make it correlated, and I throw in the rest of my top value plays just by sorting them all week. My absolute core this week, which did not work out for me, was Amari Cooper, Travis Kelce, Devontae Adams. They featured in pretty much every lineup that I threw out there with Westbrook-Ikhine, right? And everything else was just simply, okay, I like Aaron Rodgers pass. I like Devontae Adams a lot. I like Aaron Rodgers because I thought he was going to be less than 10% owned. He came in at 3.5% owned here. I will play Aaron Rodgers at home at 3.5% ownership literally every single week of the season if I can get that. So not upset there at all. It literally just didn't work out. But the thought process was Rodgers back at home, even in the red zone, probably going to look to get the passing touchdowns a little bit more than the rushing touchdowns. Bring it back with Najee Harris because Harris is so involved in the passing game. They're likely not moving the ball down the field very well, so they're throwing passes to him. He did end up still getting his 6 receptions in this game. And then the rest is just simply the top value plays of the week that I played in pretty much every single lineup. That I told you here, and if you're on Sportsline, you would have seen that was the core that I was on all week.
Yeah, and it was Randall Cobb that actually came through with the 2 touchdowns. I just wanted to mention his name because with Marquez Valdez-Scantling on IR for the at least next 2 weeks, you have to be on the IR for at least 3 weeks total. Maybe Randall Cobb kind of works his way to some sneaky value here. He's only 4K on DraftKings in week 5. I did just want to touch on Clyde Edwards-Helaire as well because he's someone we brought up last week. And he's performing now. First 2 weeks, not so good. Now back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. Also had a receiving touchdown in each of those. You don't love the fact that Darrell Williams is still being used closer to the goal line. He has 2 touchdowns within 2 yards in 2 of the last 3 games for the Chiefs. But Sia, after some skepticism, I think rightfully so, fumbling in week 2, not catching any passes, it looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is getting back on track here and has legitimate value for DFS purposes.
Totally agree. And for the last 2 weeks, Mike's been pumping this guy up, and I don't know how many people are actually listening, but it's one of those things where I don't think Clyde Edwards-Helaire is really that talented. I truly don't, but I also don't think it really matters if this offense is humming like it was against the Eagles. And by the way, speaking of Travis Kelce, so the reason why I think we all thought, and it's not just us, I think the entire industry thought Travis Kelce was going to be such a good play is because the 2 previous weeks where Kansas City, by the way, lost, they were bracketing and double covering Tyreek Hill all day. And that was leaving Tyreek Hill open underneath. And you might say, well, yeah, we don't want to, Travis Kelce underneath. you might say, well, yeah, we don't want to leave Travis Kelce open. Well, the consequence of leaving Travis Kelce open and giving that underneath stuff is you force Mahomes to slowly matriculate the ball down the field, which he doesn't like to do, and which actually has led to turnovers through the month of September. So for some reason, the Eagles decided they wanted to single cover Tyreek Hill in most situations, and he just completely ate them up. So the defensive game plan that was actually working for opponents of the Chiefs week 2 and week 3, well, the Eagles, for whatever reason, decided not to do that. And so it adversely affected Travis Kelce because Tyreek Hill was going to burn whoever was guarding him, whether it was Darius Slay or not, all day.
Imagine thinking Darius Slay can guard Tyreek Hill one-on-one, right?
I mean, what are we doing? What are we actually doing?
Who is the DC of the Eagles right now? I got to look this up.
Gannon.
Oh, my God. Yeah. That's you don't want to do that. You don't want to single cover Tyreek Hill. But I think also they were probably trying to overcompensate for, I guess, what happened in week 3, right? Because they got shredded by Dalton Schultz in primetime. They gave up 2 touchdowns there. So maybe that's something that's in the back of their mind. Like, all right, we don't want to get beat up by the tight end again. But then, again, you bring defenders up, and then what happens is you leave Tyreek Hill in single coverage, and that's what winds up happening to basically any defense that tries to do that. Mm-hmm. I will pull up my one of my GPP teams this past week, and winter is coming. That means lots of snowflakes here. Kirk Cousins with the stack of Justin Jefferson in the lineup here. Of course, could have been a much bigger day if Odell Beckham hits on those touchdowns. Maybe we get some more scoring on the other side then. We potential shootout between the Vikings and Browns, but ultimately that does not come to fruition. David Montgomery in the lineup here. Got the chalky running backs. Najee Harris does what he's supposed to do. I have some value plays. I have Evan Ingram, Nick Akini, Westbrook. Those are just my one-offs here, trying to save some salary. Did get Evan Ingram just 5%, but really doesn't do much in that game against the New Orleans Saints, in a game where Daniel Jones throws for over 400 yards. Evan Ingram does Evan Ingram things. And then I had Devontae Adams also correlated with Najee Harris, and I had the Bears defense correlated with David Montgomery. This isn't as correlated as my GPP lineups normally are, but I felt okay about it. I think ultimately, Mike, this just comes down to Beckham not scoring those touchdowns, and then that game just not turning into a shootout.
Yeah, no, the lineup is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the lineup. The defense and running back correlation is beautiful. I also, on FanDuel, I played a Cousins and Jefferson lineup. And like you, we were probably pretty excited about this lineup in the first 10 minutes of the game. March down the field, throw a touchdown to Jefferson. Looks like all systems go. We've got the Cleveland side. Right.
Counting my money, Mike. I was counting the money. I was ready to go.
And then this doesn't come through late. The Cleveland side, there's really no offense in that game. I mean, there's 21 total points in that game. And frankly, we're expecting probably 24 points in the first half of that game. So it didn't get there, and it's just an unfortunate product. But if we want to talk about process over results there, I think there was absolutely nothing wrong with your process on that lineup, other than maybe not playing Westbrook-Ikhine in every GPP. However, I will still say that he was a very sharp play for a couple of reasons. One, when you look at the ownership levels in the higher buy-in contests, he was more owned in the more expensive contests than he was in the cheaper contests, which tells you generally more professional players are interested in playing that value play. And then number 2, we talked about the volume maybe not being there. I would argue that the volume was there for him. He was targeted 8 times. You give me a wide receiver at that price point, getting targeted 8 times, like catch 5 of them, average target 6 to 8 yards, maybe get in the end zone, maybe don't, but like you should have put up 10 to 12 points pretty conservatively. Like if you play that game again 100 times, he's not scoring that low very many times again. So I think, like I'm talking about with the sharper crowd in the higher stakes contest wanting to play him more than that, I think there's nothing wrong with playing him, just an unfortunate result.
Yeah, look, if you tell me that before the game, Nick Westbrook-Ikhine is getting 16% of the targets in a game where the teams combined for 51 points and it's a 3-point game, you play him every time.
Yeah,
it's based on that process. So I think it's a good point that you bring up there. And before we hit the break, just want to remind everyone that our FFT DFS contest is live on DraftKings. 150 entries, $5 per entry. Top 15 gets paid out. And the link is in the podcast and YouTube description if you would like to join and play against Sia, Mike, myself, and my dad. My dad has actually competed in every one of the contests that we put out. He has not cashed yet, but if he does, I'll I'll pull up his lineup one day here and we'll take a look at what he does there. But ultimately, I did want to give a shout out to the winner of our contest here, Kush 6. They take it down 197.68 points in this one. They go with the Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith stack to bring it back with Tyreek Hill. That is awesome. Devontae Smith has his breakout game here, 7 for 122 yards. You get that 100 plus receiving yardage bonus on DraftKings. Chase Edmonds and Zach Moss, you hit the mid-tier sub $6,000 for each of those names. And they come through. Chase Edmonds has a game that, we talk about every week that he's capable of having, puts up 21 points there. And then you hit some chalk with Amari Cooper, Najee Harris. Dawson Knox is the moneymaker here. 537, 2 touchdowns at 5% ownership, puts up nearly 21 DK points here. This is a pretty awesome lineup, Sia.
I absolutely love it. I love the use of, and I wonder if this is partly, and we talked about this last week, a result of listening to our show, because we've been singing the praises of Chase Edmonds the whole season for good reason. And we were certainly singing the praises of Zach Moss last week. So, I mean, there's nothing, I mean, the Dawson Knox thing, listen, that's sometimes going to work and sometimes it's not. In a regular GPP, this lineup still would have cashed most likely, even if you had like Will Dissly in there. But these low end tight ends, they're going to hit, they're going to miss. That's why we typically pay up for the Travis Kelce's of the world. But yeah, I like it. Amari seems to be the only miss. He did get hurt, so it's certainly understandable. But this is a just absolutely great lineup.
Mike, anything that you'd like to add to this lineup? Dawson Knox, by the way, I mean, he's someone that the fantasy industry collectively has watched the past couple of years. And you say there's something there. I mean, the guy seems like he has talent. It's just that the Bills spread the ball out so much. Obviously they target Stephon Diggs quite a bit, but they have 4 receivers out there at most of the times, and obviously there just wasn't enough to go around. It seems like the Dawson Knox breakout is kind of happening right now.
It definitely is happening, and this lineup is great. And frankly, this lineup it underperformed. Like, this should be well over 200 points. The score from Moss, like he has a 20-point game just like Edmonds. In most scenarios, you run that game back. That's a 20-point performance from him. Amari's probably hitting 20 if he's truly fully healthy and ready to go in there. I think the lineup is absolutely fantastic. And whether you played Knox intentionally to pivot from Dissly or not, either way, like I mentioned earlier, I played Dissly, as did Sia. If I had known he was going to be 35% owned, I would have made a pivot really, really, really quickly. I was not expecting that level of ownership. Anytime you're going to have your value tight end, it's not even the same as a wide receiver. A value tight end like that, if you know they're going to be that chalky, you're going to be way better off making the pivot every single time.
All right.
The one thing, Frank, the one thing I wanted to add is that, keep in mind, this is a 150-person contest, this CBS FFT DFS contest. And the reason I bring that up is because that lineup, other than the initial stack, wasn't super highly correlated. It ended up doing great regardless. But I would definitely say if you're in a tournament with, like, I don't know, 20,000 or something, you might want to have like a secondary stack sort of correlation in there. But again, with 150 people, even with maybe like 500 people, you don't necessarily need to do that. And he didn't do that, which is just fine.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we return, we'll take an early look at Week 5 pricing next on Fantasy Football Today DFS. All right, so Week 5 is nearly here. The main slate will consist of 12 games, not our usual 13, with the Jets taking on the Falcons in London at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Time Sunday. So again, that game is not part of the main slate. Only 3 games with a total of at least 50 points as of now, according to Caesars Sportsbook. Though if you lower that number to 48 points, we have 7 games with at least a 48-point total. So that's going to happen when the Seahawks and Rams play on Thursday Night Football and the Bills and Chiefs play on Sunday Night Football. We just don't have these massive point totals that we're used to seeing. At the quarterback position, we have one quarterback at 8K, and that is Kyler Murray, who is at home against the San Francisco 49ers. If you drop down a tier, there are 3 names that I'm looking at as of now in this mid-tier range. Jalen Hurts at 7K. He's at the Carolina Panthers, a defense that, for the most part, has played very well this year. But Hurts just has such a safe floor the way that he is rushing the ball. And honestly, he's throwing the ball pretty well also. Dak Prescott is 6,900 in that divisional matchup against the Giants. And then Justin Herbert, 6,800 at home against the Cleveland Browns. Mike, any interest in these top-tier quarterbacks in Week 5?
Yeah, I do have some interest there. I think that there's two that I really, really like, and that's going to be Kyler Murray and Aaron Rodgers. I like Aaron Rodgers. I think it'll be a big bounce back spot for Devontae Adams in particular. So I'm always going to be interested in stacking those up. You mentioned Prescott Hurts right below him. I love that Aaron Rodgers is $100 more and $200 more than both of those two guys. I think we're going to get Rodgers in tournaments at under 5% owned once again this week. So I'll be playing that in tournaments for sure, like Kyler Murray, as I mentioned. And then Trey Lance, I'll be dropping all the way down and playing that as long as everything's good to go and he's starting there. I think it's going to be a really great spot for him. And I think the floor is just exceptionally high because I do anticipate him trying to run and also having to run against this defense.
Yep. Trey Lance, he's the wild card. We mentioned a few weeks back, Justin Fields was that wild card. He was set to make his first start at the time against the Cleveland Browns. Trey Lance, 5,700 at the Cardinals this week with one of the higher totals on the main slate. This is all assuming that Jimmy Garoppolo can't go because there's already been some whispers that Kyle Shanahan said he might be ready to go. I don't know. Originally, they said it was going to be a couple of weeks, but Trey Lance last week played one half. He put up 20.38 DK points. He ran for like 41 yards. He threw 2 touchdowns, one of them completely blown coverage. So shout out to the Seahawks secondary there for helping out Deebo Samuel. But a few other names that are 6K or less that caught my eye. Trey Lance was one of them. Daniel Jones, 6K at the Cowboys. He has at least 16 DK points and 27 rushing yards in each game this season. I mentioned earlier, he threw for 400 yards last week against the New Orleans Saints. And then Trevor Lawrence, 5,800 up against the Tennessee Titans. See, you mentioned this Titan secondary cannot cover anybody right now. Shenault is coming off his best game of the season. Obviously, Marvin Jones is still there. DJ Chark is on IR. What do you think about these lower priced quarterbacks? And just a bonus question. Do you think Urban Meyer actually makes it to Sunday?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he does make it to Sunday. I mean, often the bad news or the bad press, if you will, like comes initially and then just kind of fizzles out. And I think Urban Meyer's probably going to be here for the whole year, and then they'll find a way for him to kind of leave gracefully, perhaps. But so listen, I like all these guys. I don't know how many I'm going to play outside of Trey Lance. I like Trey Lance quite a bit, even without that blown coverage. Like, let me be clear about Trey Lance. I don't think he's ready to be a starting NFL quarterback, but I also don't know that it really matters from a fantasy perspective because he will pile up some yards and those short area targets that he has, with respect to Deebo and Brandon Ayuk, if Brandon Ayuk actually gets some touches. I mean, these guys can, run a 6-yard slant to the house. So, I mean, he's going to get help from his receivers, but also with his legs. So he's a great value. I think Daniel Jones is very interesting at 6K. I would want to see how many of his receivers are healthy for that game, and that'll convince me a little bit more. Trevor Lawrence, I don't love, but at 5,800, I'm going to have 1 or 2 shares of him in the event that they rely on his arm rather than James Robinson.
And your point on Trey Lance, like, everyone's talking about Trey Lance right now. And I think if he's a starter, he's probably going to have a pretty high ownership this week. But especially if you play in cash or single entry, look, 5,700, I think that you can afford to play Trey Lance even at higher ownership at that price. And last point on him, you mentioned he's not ready to be a starting quarterback, and it probably doesn't matter. Let me just remind everyone the name of Tim Tebow, right? Like, there was a time where he was fantasy relevant just because of what he would do rushing. And that's not meant to disparage Trey Lance or compare him to Tebow. It's actually, I think it's propping him up because he's better than Tim Tebow and better than, Tim Tebow as a quarterback prospect. So I think that's just more reason to target him in week 5, assuming that he starts. At the running back position, we have the 4 horsemen that are up over 8K on DraftKings. Derrick Henry at the Jaguars, he is $9,000. Christian McCaffrey is going up against the Eagles. He's 8,700. He's going to try and practice on Wednesday to see where he's at physically. Alvin Kamara is at Washington this week. He is 8,600. And then Dalvin Cook is going up against the Detroit Lions in what should be an amazing matchup. He's 8,400, but he left early again in week 4 dealing with that ankle injury. He only played 49% of the snaps. We all saw what David Montgomery did against that Lions defense 1 week ago. I would not be surprised if, even at this cost, Derrick Henry is like 70% owned in cash. And obviously, we're going to need some value to open up here, but against the Jaguars, it's going to be very enticing. Sia, what do you think about this elite group up over 8K?
And, stay tuned for the Thursday show, because I think by then we'll have some value open up. Usually it'll even open up more, as the weekend progresses. But yeah, I think Thursday show, we're going to be able to consider some builds with Derrick Henry and, let's say, a Trey Lance and a couple low end receivers because of injuries, or low end running backs that are going to allow us to do a lot of things this week. I like Derrick Henry a lot. I mean, it's just hard not to like him, particularly at Jacksonville. This team needs a win. Tennessee's kind of desperate for a win. They don't really have the receiving options. I don't know that A.J. Brown or Julio Jones are going to be back on Sunday. And I just think they're going to have to lean on Henry. Listen, this guy is averaging over 30 touches per game. I mean, it's kind of unheard of these days in the modern NFL to have a running back get this many rush attempts and this many targets. So again, over 30 touches a game. Combining attempts and targets, I don't see that slowing down for this particular game. So I like him a lot. I think Kamara is interesting coming off a bad game. That Washington defense has a lot of holes in it. And I think if New Orleans is smart, they lean on Kamara not only in the running game, but also the passing game. They didn't do it last week. I thought they would. But I think their game plan, especially coming off that loss, is going to shift. And Kamara is going to be a major centerpiece.
And see, you mentioned that the Titans are desperate for a win here. So are the Jaguars. So I wonder if that leads to this game being even more competitive. And normally those are the games where Derrick Henry could just go absolutely ballistic. Some mid-tier names that stand out to me at their current cost. Saquon Barkley is at the Cowboys. He's 7,300. He's played at least 84% of the snaps in each of the past 3 games. Ezekiel Elliott has played well the past 2 games. He is on the other side there going up against the Giants. He is 7K. James Robinson on the other side of Derrick Henry. He is 6K in the spot, 95% of the snaps last week. He had 19 touches and 2 touchdowns. And then Kareem Hunt, I was surprised. He has scored, I believe, a touchdown in 3 of 4 games. He was 6K last week, and then they drop his price down to 5,800 here at the Chargers in what I would expect to be a pretty competitive game between the Browns and the Chargers here. So, Mike, these are some mid-tier names that stand out to me. Saquon, Zeke, James Robinson, Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on James Robinson at 6K for now. Another one that hasn't been mentioned yet, Leonard Fournette, 5,200, I think is very interesting. I know we always, you're at the risk of Tom wanting to throw everything in the end zone, but I was very encouraged with his workload. I think at 5,200 as of right now, he's one of the better plays. I do expect a lot of value to open up. We haven't mentioned down at the bottom Samaje Perine for the Bengals. I think that he's going to be in play at the minimum price. And then Damian Williams for the Chicago Bears against the Raiders. I think a good spot for him as well. At the top-ish, I call it the top-ish. I think Najee Harris is where I would end up looking again. Likely going to play him over Kamara or Derrick Henry personally. I can tell you I'm going to have Devontae Adams in every lineup again this week. I think it's a great spot for him. So I'm going to most likely be electing to spend up big at the receiver positions this week, because I think we're going to have a lot of value at quarterback with Lance and a lot of value at running back due to the injuries that we've seen, and that'll be built upon over the next 2 days.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you with those value plays. Damian Williams looking like he's going to fill in for David Montgomery. He left that game with a thigh bruise himself, so we'll have to make sure that he's healthy. But 5,600, capable pass catcher, has a history with Matt Nagy. Leonard Fournette coming off a game with 23 touches, and he's 5,200 in a really good matchup against the Miami Dolphins. Definitely would help if Gio Bernard does not play again this week. Let's take a look at the wide receiver position. There are 7 wide receivers that are up over 7K in week 5, and going from the highest salary to the lowest of that group. We have Devontae Adams at the Bengals. He's 8,200. Justin Jefferson versus the Lions, 77. We have DeAndre Hopkins versus the 49ers, 76. DJ Moore finally gets that massive price jump. He is up against the Eagles, 7,500. Terry McLaurin up against the Saints, 74. Mike Williams, he is $700 more than Keenan Allen, which just did not really make sense to me. Keenan Allen has a higher target share this year. He has more red zone targets. But for some reason, Mike Williams is 7,200. And then Deebo Samuel is at the Cardinals. He is 7,100. See, anyone stand out here from the upper tier of wide receivers?
Only a couple guys for me. Devontae Adams, of course. I agree about the bounce back spot. I think that's going to be a good stack with Rodgers. I like DJ Moore again against Philly's defense. We saw what Tyreek Hill. Maybe the Philly D adjusts, but at the same time, DJ Moore has just been a target monster, favorite target for Sam Darnold. So I like him quite a bit. But yeah, in this top end, that's pretty much, I think, all I'm, at least for right now, that's all I'm going to be playing.
In the mid tier, Keenan Allen, just mentioned his name. He is 6,500. He has a 28% target share on the season. Chris Godwin is going up against the Dolphins. He is 6,300 in the spot. And then both Cowboys wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb is 6,200. Amari Cooper is 6,100. I've already looked at a few optimizers, and those are names that are popping off early in the week. The problem is Dak Prescott has 27 pass attempts or less in 3 straight games. He's still finding a way to meet value. He's using his tight ends. He's incorporating Ezekiel Elliott a little bit more as well. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about the Cowboys at this price point. Mike, what do you think? CeeDee Lamb, 6,200. Amari Cooper, 61.
I don't mind them. I think they're fringe playable in all formats. I think that there's going to be a point where they're going to be really good tournament plays once again, because there is going to be that week where they find themselves in an overly competitive game that we don't think is supposed to be that competitive. Could very well be this division game against a team that just beat the Saints. So I like them. I would prefer to like them more when I really wanted to play Dak, and I still might, but as of right now, it's going to be a lot of Trey Lance for me. So I'm going to be looking at the top. It's going to be, I can tell you right now, my initial build has Devontae Adams, DJ Moore, and Deebo Samuel as the 3 wide receivers in the build. That's where I'm looking at right now, because there's no Travis Kelce to pay up for. But the reason why I like them is it sets up really well, the Dallas receivers in particular, sets up really well in terms of building correlated lineups, because we know we're not going to be able to pay up for Travis Kelce at tight end. Evan Ingram, $3,200. Really good bring back piece if you're looking at a Cowboys stack. Kadarius Toney is still relevant, 4K there. But that bring back piece with Evan Ingram, when we know that there's not the elite tight end class here, I think that that's going to be a pretty crucial piece to playing someone like Amari Cooper or CeeDee Lamb. If those guys are going to have the kind of game that you're looking for, it's likely because the Giants are moving the football, and the Giants, to move the football and be really competitive here, I don't really envision scenarios where Evan Ingram isn't at least targeted.
There were 8 value plays, and these are below 6K that stood out to me. Marvin Jones is 5,700 going up against that Titans secondary. There's no DJ Chark in this matchup. Allen Robinson is all the way down to 5,500. I don't really know if we can trust him, but at the same time, I just feel like eventually the talent is going to win out for Allen Robinson. T. Higgins, if he can make his return, he's only 5K. So if you want to correlate stacks there, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, bring it back with T. Higgins. He is the cheapest of the 3 Bengals wide receivers. Hunter Renfrow has at least 6 targets in each game. He's 4,900 this week. Laviska Shenault coming off his best game. He's 4,800. Jalen Waddle, Will Fuller will not play in week 5. Jalen Waddle is 4,800. He has a 21% target share at the Tampa Bay Bucks. Their secondary has struggled this season. Mike, you mentioned Kadarius Toney. He is only 4K, played 78% of the snaps last week, and 23 of those came in the slot. 16 came out wide. He saw 9 targets. So they were trying to manufacture touches for Kadarius Toney, and he actually looked pretty good. And this one just stood out to me. Stone minimum this week, Curtis Samuel. He is 3K going up against New Orleans. He only played 37% of the snaps last week, but 8 out wide, 7 in the slot, 1 in the backfield. He has a history with Ron Rivera, who's his coach there. This seems crazy to me. I don't know. 3K, that seems too cheap to you.
I totally agree. And I honestly, I think the 37% snap rate that you mentioned was just them reacclimating him to, a full game. I don't think they were going to throw him out with the soft tissue injury that he had. They weren't going to just throw him out for 80% of the snaps. So that one makes a ton of sense. As far as the value plays that you mentioned, I do love Shenault, but I think I like Waddle even better. They're both the same price. And again, I know you talked about it, but listen, Miami's going to be down in this game, and Waddle is going to be a main target against this back end of the Bucs that is getting a new injury every single game. It wasn't a good back end in the first place. This could be an absolute breakout for Waddle. And I'll just mention in that same game, Antonio Brown, I don't know if you mentioned him, but at 5,200, I think there's plenty of value there.
Yeah, I believe he had 11 or 12 targets this past week, so definitely could get some Antonio Brown in there. Let's move on to the tight end position, and you mentioned Jalen Waddle. They're playing from behind. Mike Gesicki is 4,200. He has run 120 routes this season. Only 6 of them have come in line as a tight end. So basically, he is a big slot receiver, and Jacoby Brissett likes throwing to his slot receivers so far, Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki. So at 4,200, he stands out to me. Jared Cook is only 3,600. He is 6th among tight ends in routes run this season. The super cheap value play that is standing out to me, Logan Thomas is hurt. And Ricky Seals-Jones is someone like, I feel like I've wanted him to be something for so long. I feel like we all have, but he is the minimum price up against the Saints at 2,500. Mike, can I interest you in any of those value tight ends, or is there anyone that you're looking up to pay for?
Yeah, no, I think that Ricky Seals-Jones is definitely in play. It's going to come down to what the ownership's going to be looking like later in the week for me, especially when you get into these cheaper value tight ends. I'm very conscious of what the projected ownership's going to be there, way more so than when I'm just playing Travis Kelce. I mentioned Evan Ingram just because I think that I am going to have pieces of Dallas in tournaments at least, and I think he's a really good bring back there. The other guy that I want to talk about, I think we've talked about him a little bit here. We've definitely talked about him over on Sportsline on the early edge. It's going to be Max Williams, $3,400 for Arizona. Going to be a crucial bring back piece for me if I have a Trey Lance lineup and I'm not paying up for DeAndre Hopkins because I'm paying up for those other three guys that I've already told you about. I think that that's going to be a very nice bring back piece at 3,400. I love his involvement in the passing game. I love the way Kyler Murray is distributing the football pretty evenly to all of his weapons so far. So at 3,400, I think you could do a lot worse than Max Williams.
Yep, and that game does have one of the higher totals on the main slate as well between the Cardinals and the 49ers. See the higher price tight ends this week. Darren Waller is 7,300. George Kittle is in that same game at the Cardinals. We're talking about Max Williams. He's 5,600. So weird. George Kittle does not have a red zone target this year. It just stood out to me when I was looking things up earlier. TJ Hawkinson is at the Vikings. He's 5,500, but has slowed down quite a bit over the last 2 weeks. Anyone higher price here that you like see it, or are you also looking at value plays?
Oh, I'm definitely looking at value plays, but of the three top guys, I think Hawkinson is the most interesting. I'm not willing to gamble with Kittle, especially with Trey Lance at quarterback. I don't know what to expect, and Kittle's a little banged up as well. I don't want to pay with the builds that I want to have this week. I'm not going to pay $7,300 for Waller at home against the Bears. But Hawkinson, the stock is down a little bit, but honestly, against Minnesota, I think he's going to have a pretty easy time. So I think he'll suck up a lot of targets. He probably won't have very high ownership because he's the third most expensive tight end. And if that's the case, if our ownership projections indicate that, and again, we'll have some initial ownership projections on the Thursday show, I think Hawkinson's a pretty smart play.
All righty, that will do it. For Mike and Sia, I am Frank. Thank you all for listening and watching Fantasy Football Today DFS. The next time you hear us will be Thursday when we break down each game on the main slate in Week 5. See you then.